Zack Snyder's got a pretty dedicated fan base. In fact, it's so big, you might even say it's something of an army. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. Today, we're talking about a brand new Netflix release, Army of the Dead. Before we begin, let me know in the comments what your thoughts on this movie were, if you already saw it, or if you were planning on seeing it, and make sure to hit that thumbs up button if you like these reviews, as it helps me out immensely by getting my channel out there. And if you're new here, I hope you consider hitting that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with reviews of new releases, older films, hidden gems, and so much more on a near daily basis. But let's jump right into it and let's talk about Army of the Dead. This takes place after a zombie outbreak in Las Vegas, where a group of mercenaries take the ultimate gamble, venturing into the quarantine zone to pull off the greatest heist ever attempted. This is the 9th film directed by Zack Snyder, and only the 3rd where he actually had a hand in writing or co-writing the screenplay. And I will say, while I'm not a die-hard Zack Snyder fan, I do think he's a much better director than he is a writer. The other 2 films he wrote were 300 and Sucker Punch, and both of them are far from my favorites of his. And I'll just get this out of the way, I'd say the same thing about this. Now, I actually thought this wasn't bad. I saw it at the end of a long day, and I've been hearing how fun it was, and that started getting me more excited for it, as I needed a movie that I could just sit down and turn my brain off to. I didn't want to think too hard about plot or anything complex. And if that's what you're looking for, this movie will be for you. This sees Snyder return to the zombie genre after his very first film, Dawn of the Dead, which has no relation to this. But that's one of his best movies. You get people mowing down hordes of zombies for 100 minutes, and we see that once again here. The big difference this time is that Dawn of the Dead was made when Snyder didn't really have a distinct directorial style in place, whereas this is being made now that he has that style refined. So you'll have some nasty zombie fights, and some of the more pivotal sequences are done with his usual slow-mo intact, with some of the kill shots slowed down for dramatic effect or to let you just relish in the moment. And if you're a Zack Snyder fan, as well as a fan of zombie movies, you're going to have a field day with this. And I did have some fun with this myself. What added to the fun as well was the fact that you also had an ensemble cast leading this, most of whom each get their little moments to shine. The setup is a little familiar, where you have someone hired to pull off a heist and he has to assemble a ragtag crew and everyone has their little quirks, but it's fun. It's almost like watching Ocean's 11 but with zombies. Now, for the most part, everyone did a pretty good job. Our main character is Scott, played by Dave Bautista, who leads the crew, and I enjoy following him around. Bautista is someone who's very charismatic and can help elevate the material no matter what movie he's in, and I found that to once again be the case here, with his quick wit and naturally likable personality. And he does have a tragic backstory that I thought was handled pretty well, being that he had to kill his wife who became a zombie, and it led to him being estranged from his daughter Kate, played by Ella Purnell. And I thought Purnell herself was really good, and I'd say probably gave the best performance of everyone here, mainly because she handled the more emotional material a lot better than everyone else, because she joins due to the fact that she volunteers at a quarantine camp, and she discovers one woman she knew from the camp went into the area where the heist is taking place, so she hopes to bring her back, trying to keep her mind focused on that instead of the tension between her and her father. And I thought Purnell handled all that material gracefully. Though on the same note, I did think this film's attempts at being more emotional in general were a bit hit and miss for me. As I said, Snyder's a better director than he is a writer, and there were a number of times here where characters had to be really emotionally intense in certain scenes, and while I thought the performances were all good, the dialogue just comes off as clunky and disjointed, and usually there was this sense that it felt off. Though I'd say Purnell did the best job of really making it sound believable, along with Bautista himself. Other standouts in the cast include Amari Hardwick as a former teammate of Bautista's, Matthias Schweighöfer as the safecracker, Garrett Dillahunt as the assistant of the man who hires Bautista, who everyone suspects has ulterior motives, and Tig Notaro as the helicopter pilot. All of whom are really solid, with humorous moments of their own, and for the most part had good chemistry with just about everyone. However, it is worth noting, though, that Tig Notaro was brought in to replace Chris D'Elia, who had filmed his scenes already but was removed due to sexual misconduct allegations. The thing is, due to the replacement occurring while the pandemic was going on and restrictions in place, Nataro had to be added in via reshooting scenes with stand-ins or digitally adding her in over Dalia. And you can tell sometimes that, while she is funny, sometimes her scenes will feel just a bit off. I know Snyder and the crew were doing their best here and working with what they got, but it does sometimes feel like there's something disjointed about her scenes, like she's talking to herself, or it comes off like she's talking past some of the characters. And if you know this information going in, it becomes really obvious she's not there with everyone. Again, I know it's not the crew's fault, but it's very noticeable, if I had to be perfectly honest. One thing worth noting regarding the zombies, though, is that while you do have your standard zombies here, there's also something of a zombie hierarchy, as you have a group of more intelligent zombies known as alphas, and they're led by two zombies known as Zeus and the Bride, or at least that's how they're credited. And I found this to be the most unique thing about this film, as that's something we've never seen before in zombie movies, at least from what I recall. And there are some interesting things regarding this, as unlike your typical zombies, they can actually be reasoned with. There's a plot point early on where it's mentioned that if you offer something up to them, they'll allow people passage into their territory and leave them alone, as long as you leave them alone, which I thought was really fascinating. The main criticism I had for that, though, is that as much as this mythology is built up, it felt like the film ultimately didn't do as much with this spin on the genre as I would have liked. There is a unique dynamic established early on, as our protagonists are able to make their way into the Alpha's territory due to being able to bargain with them, but as the film progresses, that interesting dynamic is kind of tossed to the wayside, and they eventually begin to feel just like any other zombie. And I would have liked to have seen Snyder take more advantage of that. And that leads into a criticism I had with the film overall, which that it does fizzle out in the second half and not fully live up to its potential. While I found the first half to be really solid, you do have characters splitting up, taking off, and going in different directions. And, I mean, stuff like that's bound to happen in zombie movies, but a lot of what made this so fun in the first half, besides the zombie kills, was the dynamic among all the group. And as you begin getting rid of characters or forcing the surviving characters to split up and you lose that dynamic, it does unfortunately bring the movie down a bit, as these characters aren't as interesting on their own. Maybe it wouldn't have been so bad if it also didn't drag a number of these moments out, which leads to another criticism I had. Like most of Zack Snyder's films, this is way too long. For a film that ultimately didn't do as much with some of the mythology it built up, the 2.5-hour runtime was not warranted at all. I wouldn't say the film slowed down in the second half necessarily, like, it didn't become boring, but Snyder definitely dragged a number of scenes out during this part of the film just for the sake of tension or so he can milk his own stylistic choices, and it began wearing me down a bit. As characters began splitting up and we'd be in certain moments longer than we needed, I began caring a bit less. Like, there were scenes that were dragged out a bit in the first half as well, don't get me wrong there, but part of what made up for that was the fact that you also had this really fun group dynamic that was just a joy to watch. But as you started to lose that as the film goes on, and those same stylistic choices were still there, the issue becomes a lot more noticeable. And this was also where the film tried being even more emotional, and as I said earlier, those moments felt a bit clunkier in general. And while there were some moments that still worked in the second half, the fact that it leaned into that a bit more just didn't always work for me. Army of the Dead is fine. It's not what I was hoping it would be, but it was by no means a bad movie. While it had its moments where it can be really fun due to the action scenes and the dynamic among all the characters, it definitely starts running out of steam in the second half. Not only was it hurt by the group dynamic starting to dissipate, but its attempts at being more emotional didn't always work due to the dialogue being really clunky, as much as the cast tried. On top of the fact that it didn't do as much with certain spins on the mythology as it could have done, making its 2.5-hour runtime feel totally unnecessary. Overall, while it's not one of Zack Snyder's strongest films, it's a good movie to just turn on if you need some mindless entertainment, and nothing more. Army of the Dead gets a 6.5 out of 10. So I recently did a review series leading up to this where I reviewed all of Zack Snyder's films, and I'll leave a link to the playlist in the description in case you missed any of those reviews. But now that I got to this, stay tuned as I'll soon have a ranking video out of all of Zack Snyder's films. But in the meantime, let me know. Did you see Army of the Dead, or are you planning to see it, and what were your thoughts? Did you like this more than Dawn of the Dead? Do you have a favorite zombie movie in general? Let me know in the comments below so we can discuss. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it, and for more movie reviews and film discussion, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. Thanks for watching everyone, and keep having fun with film.